So wherever we are, let's go ahead and find a comfortable sitting posture. Also, maybe mute your microphones. Maybe there's a way for me to mute microphones. Let me see. Looks like there is. So go ahead and find a comfortable posture. Sitting upright, feeling the ground beneath your feet. Letting your spine grow up towards the sky. Just taking a little bit of time to sit together in silence. You can practice any technique you like. If you're familiar with some kind of meditation technique, for example, following the breath, or paying attention to external or internal sense phenomena, regardless of what's happening where you are. Maybe the environment is calm, there's not much going on, or maybe it's quite chaotic. Regardless, do your best to settle in and maintain some kind of meditation practice. If you don't have any particular technique to work with, then I would suggest just following the breath in the belly. Practice moving your attention into your lower abdomen, feeling the rise and fall, expansion and contraction of each inhale and each exhale. Are there any other phenomena occurring? These sounds, sights, body sensations, or thoughts and emotions? And for now, just let all of that be. No need to do anything special with it. And let each breath draw you more completely into your body. If you find that there is some anxiety present as you sit here in silence, there are, of course, many ways to work with that anxiety. One way is simply to elongate the out breath, intentionally lengthen the time that you spend on each exhalation, letting each inhalation come naturally. This will tend to physically calm the body. It will also emotionally calm anxiety. You're just arriving. We're just going to spend these first few minutes sitting together in silence, practicing any meditation technique we like, in order to arrive in this moment. Of course, we aren't together right now, and so there isn't as much of a ease of communication, seeing each other sitting together, and yet we can know that as we sit here, in fact, we are together. We have devices and show us icons each other's pictures. But even independently of that, we're all actually together in this world, on this planet. I suppose if I look out there right now in four directions, I should be able to look at you. You should be able to look at me and at each other. We just might be very small and very quiet. May not be able to see each other or hear each other because we're so small, so quiet, so far away. And yet, all the same, we are in fact in the same world. Now, as we sit here in silence, let's practice experiencing the joy of being together in that way. Being with each other and, in fact, being with everyone. Right now, as we're sitting here, we're sitting with everyone. Continuing to practice together, sitting in silence, implementing some kind of meditation technique. Let's enjoy this opportunity to be together. Intentionally taking this time to experience this moment as it is. Okay, So thank you for sitting with me through that. And thanks for being here, or there, wherever you are. I guess thanks for tuning in is what people say now. Online internet event. I muted some of you out for the practice. You can feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in with something, although I would encourage us to follow kind of a format of me talking, then us sitting, then us talking. So at any point, if you have a question or something, you want to say something to the group, you can feel free. And in fact, actually, since this is kind of weird for me, I can't really see most of you very well. How about if we open up? We'll just take maybe a couple minutes, few minutes, maybe it'll be 5 minutes or more. Everyone just maybe say your name and where you're tuning in from. I wonder how that's going to work. I think I'm going to say people's names, and then I'm going to invite you to say who you are and where you are. And optionally, one fact about either of those two situations. So, Steve, how about if you start us off?
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve. I am in a second floor room at approximately 25th and Mission, San Francisco, California. I might have a cold. Hopefully it's just a cold. That's it.
All right. Hopefully it's just a cold. Henry, you're next.
Yeah, hi. I'm Henry. I am sitting in my apartment in San Francisco in the Castro. And I've pretty much finished all of my stocking up that requires going out, so I'm settling in here.
Great. We'll just start going alphabetically. Meng?
I'm Ming. I'm in Santa Cruz, California.
Nice to see you. Dana? We cannot hear you, Dana. Maybe Dana is having sound issues. Let's go ahead and move on, and we can come back later if you can tune in then. Daniel?
I'm Daniel, and I'm tuning in from Berkeley.
David?
Hey everyone, I'm David. I'm tuning in from San Francisco as well.
Donnie?
Hi, I'm Donnie, and I'm in Berkeley, and I seem to have like mild bronchitis. Yay.
Hello. Jeff? Jeff Tang.
Hello.
Yes.
Sorry, looking for the unmute. My name is Jeff. I'm tuning in from Ohio. I was in San Francisco the past 2 years and went to folk events there, but now back home for a little bit.
Wow. Amazing. Jeremy?
I'm Jeremy, tuning in from my house in Berkeley, where I'm self-quarantined.
Yes. And by the way, I said amazing because I'm from Ohio, and there are a couple other people from Ohio too, just so you know. It wasn't completely arbitrary.
Okay.
Naomi?
Yeah, hi. I'm Naomi, and I am sitting in my apartment in the Inner Richmond. I'm really stoked to see so many people that I know, and welcome to anybody who clicked on my link in the Noisebridge Philosophy Guild, which I just posted kind of like the last second. So that's pretty cool. And I'm sniffly because I've been crying. I really miss my son right now. He's at his daddy's house.
Pam? Pam Tarlow. Maybe not. We'll come back to you, or you can jump in if you like. Renee, aka Mom.
Hi, I'm Renee. I'm here from Akron, Ohio. So happy to be with you all.
Nice to be here with you.
Practicing social distancing.
Richard, aka Dad.
Hi, everyone. I'm Richard, and I'm also in Akron, Ohio, and very glad to be here.
Robert.
Hi, I'm Rob. I have been from Ohio. I am currently in beautiful Denton, Texas.
Stephen, aka Chucky, I believe.
Hi, I'm Steven. I am tuning in from San Francisco. I haven't been called Chucky yet, but what a great day to start.
Different Stephen. My apologies. I know another Stephen who is also known as Chucky. Which Stephen are you?
The Stephen.
Very, very good.
Stephen Cade.
The non-Chucky Stephen.
Zara.
Hello, I'm Zara. I'm in the attic or my space in my house in Berkeley, California. We are pretty quarantined, pretty locked down. Yeah, a couple small nodes out to the outside world. But hello, everyone.
Cool. Well, thank you. Really appreciate that. It was nice to see many of your faces. Actually, let's go ahead. Dana, does you want to try again? Oh no, I'm still not hearing anything. Oh well. Well, such is life. If you can manage to get the yeah, great. Dana is coming in from Berkeley, and as Donnie says, welcome Dana and Pam. So thank you. Nice to be here with you. Nice to be here with all of you. Really nice to see you all and hear from you a little bit. So the topic for the sit this week happens to have been right concentration. This is, I think, actually a really auspicious topic. I am very excited that that's the one that came up at this time in a way. Because right concentration, samyak samadhi, is in the path, the point where things get real. And I don't know how you could describe this past week other than as things having gotten real. Now, naturally, this is well, a really well-known, or maybe let's say well-discussed topic. Maybe not well-known, but a well-discussed topic. This is, of course, the topic of jhana, of concentration, of states of absorption and bliss. And a lot has been said about this in the modern world. So I think maybe first off, I'll just situate it in terms of Buddhism. First of all, it's important to note that this talk, this event in the series, came well, a long way into a series. This is multiple months in to a series on the full eightfold path in Buddhism. So some of you may be tuning in for the first time, have the sense that this is just one talk, but there's been a series. It's been going on for a long time, for many months. 2 or 3 months, and only now are we getting to the topic of concentration, of samadhi, which is, I would say, a somewhat different treatment from how other schools tend to approach this. We kind of spend talking about morality, changing your life, purifying your behavior, and then you jump into lots and lots and lots of talk about concentration and samadhi, and then a bunch of talk about enlightenment, and then you're done. And the rest is kind of just, you know, see a therapist, work on your stuff. In the way that we talk about it, right concentration is situated in terms of having already brought careful attention and effort to changing our entire life. We clarify, we purify our view, the way that we see things, what we believe in. Based on this view, we bring forth aspirations that are in accord with compassion, with love, and with selflessness. Based on that, we bring our relationships into alignment. We actually do the hard work of coming into right relationship, right connection, right social interaction with other people in the world. Based on all of that, we use our bodies to actually do things that impact the world directly. And based on all of that, we change our entire way of life. We become willing to change everything about our life. We become willing to drop anything that we're doing if it becomes clear that it's hurting us and hurting others, and to take up anything if it becomes clear that it would benefit ourselves and others. We've done all of that. In order for it to be right concentration, the word right, or samyak in Sanskrit, means, it doesn't mean so much good and bad concentration. It's more like complete and incomplete concentration. So it's not that you can't have concentration, samadhi, jhana, without having done this work. It's just that it isn't samyak samadhi, it isn't right concentration. It's mithya samadhi, wrong concentration or incomplete concentration. So right concentration is just defined in Buddhism as the kind of concentration, the kind of samadhi, the kind of jhana that is based on having done all of that other work. And further is based on the stages of right effort, where we find a new kind of energy based on integrity, based on trust, and on right mindfulness, where we are willing and able to implement a technique all day long. So that's right concentration, that's right samadhi, and it's the penultimate step in the path. It's the last spoke in the wheel of the Eightfold Path, the final one being, of course, also the first. The Eightfold Path begins and ends with right view. And more specifically, it begins with a kind of right view that is a view, and ends with what is known as transcendental right view, which is to say, the direct experience of reality, the lack of conflict with reality. So what is samadhi? Of course, it's translated as concentration. The word is often translated as concentration, and that's in some ways a good translation. But it's also a bit misleading in that we typically tend to think that concentration means that we are actively doing something. We are pushing away distractions in order to stay with something that's relevant. With right concentration, we are, you could say, staying with what's relevant, but not in a way that is pushing anything away. With right concentration, what's actually going on is that the layers of manipulation, fabrication, interference with perception, experience are peeling away. They're falling off. And we see the significance of this. We may actually see the significance of this right now, just sitting here at this particular moment in history, at this time. We are all, or at least many of us, currently isolated, sitting alone in a room looking at a computer screen, or maybe a phone or something. Last week, in all likelihood, many of us were sitting at home alone in a computer screen, and we may have felt bad about this. We may have felt like, it's so bad that I'm not going out and meeting with people in person. It's so sad that the world is such that everyone is just staring at screens all day long. I'm so bad for looking at this screen. It's not good. But this week, we're in the same objective circumstance, and yet we may feel happy. We may be congratulating ourselves. We're not spreading the virus. We're not causing a public health crisis to get worse. Same objective circumstance, and yet we feel completely different. We feel like this is great. This is exciting. It's just the way that we see it has changed. It's the same objective circumstance completely. It's just that we're seeing it in a different way, and so our experience of it is totally different. So when we talk about samadhi, we're talking about coming to something that's prior to all of that. Prior to the idea that this experience is good, that it's bad, that we are good, that we are bad, that it's right, that it's wrong, that we're right, that we're wrong, going prior to all of that. Following that out until we discover, in fact, what isn't made, what isn't fabricated, what was originally there. This is the significance of right samadhi. And practically speaking, the way it takes place. Hello, Tom. Nice to know that you've joined. Maybe you want to introduce. Let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself briefly. Just say your name and where you're calling in from, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Sorry for calling in late. Tom Duterm, and I'm calling in from home in Los Altos.
Nice to see you, Tom. So I've just introduced right samadhi in terms of the full eightfold path in Buddhism, talking about how it's dependent on the other stages of the path, on having purified our lives, our livelihoods, our behaviors, our relationships, and on having brought forth great effort, right effort rather, and right mindfulness. And I'm now about to talk about what it's actually like in practice, how it actually takes off. And how it takes off is simply enough that we connect the way that we are attending to this moment to the resolution of suffering in our own experience, and in fact, throughout the entire world. We find that as we are doing the practice, attending to the focus space, bringing our attention to the focus space and laying it on the focus space, is directly resolving the issues in our lives. The pain and suffering that we're causing ourselves based on seeing things in inaccurate or confused ways and responding according to those confused ways of seeing things. We actually directly realize, we actually directly taste that something as simple as attending to the breath in our belly could do something about that. Until we taste that, we can still practice, but it's going to be slow going in a way. We don't have any direct reason to practice, and so the only thing that there is actually faith. We believe for some reason, based on maybe having heard something from someone we trust about this path, that we ought to practice it. But we don't have any direct feedback. And the entry to samyak samadhi, to right concentration, is that we actually taste that feedback in experience. We discover purification of suffering due to practicing a technique of mindfulness. When we discover that, We discover that me just sitting here attending to a focus space is going to make my entire future better and is going to help everyone I care about, and in fact, everyone in the world. Everything gets really simple because we don't have anything else to do. There's a particular story that I'm fond of along these lines. It's a more mundane manifestation of it, you could say, but along these similar lines. It's the story of a person named Chiune Sugihara, a Japanese man who lived in the 1930s and 40s. Any of you know this guy? Heard of Chiune Sugihara? Okay. Yeah, the nodding is helpful, or shaking heads is helpful. Those of you who I can see anyway. Funny online platform. So Chiune Sugihara was a basically career diplomat who coincidentally, it so happened, got installed in the Japanese consulate of Kaunas, Lithuania in March of 1939, right before World War II started. This fairly ordinary Japanese guy shows up, settles into this consulate, this place where travel documents are issued in Lithuania, gets to work, and then 6 months later, Adolf Hitler invades Poland, and France and Britain declare war on Germany. World War II begins. So when this happens, there's a huge wave of Jewish refugees who flee Poland and head towards Lithuania. Lithuania is nearby. It's located, it's just one of these sort of natural escape routes. And so a bunch of Jewish refugees wound up showing up in Lithuania. Jews arrive in Lithuania and they start to tell the native population of Lithuania about what's been happening, about what was happening in Poland, about the nightmarish atrocities being perpetrated by the Germans in Poland. And as may not be surprising to us, having seen what's been happening over the last couple of weeks, most of the people in Lithuania didn't believe them. The native Jews in Lithuania just assumed that it wasn't really like that. Couldn't be that it was that bad. Couldn't be that that scale of cruelty, of atrocity was actually taking place. It had to be made up or exaggerated. These refugees are just stuck here. They're stuck in Lithuania, nowhere else to go. And then in June of the next year, 1940, the Soviets invade Lithuania. They take it over. And so at this point, it's now too late to escape for anyone there, and particularly for these refugees from Poland. They can't get out. Strangely, for some reason, the Soviets would allow these Polish Jews to emigrate, but only if they managed to obtain special travel documents. They had to have their documentation in order to make it out. We don't know why, but it just had to. That decision was made somehow. And at this point, most of continental Europe was under Nazi control. There wasn't really anywhere else to go. No one was taking Jewish refugees. And at this point, the German army is starting to move east towards Lithuania. So in July 1940, all the Soviet authorities cancel or command all the foreign embassies to leave, to abandon the post, the consulate, and get out. But this one guy, Chiune Sugihara, decides to stay behind. He gets a 3-week extension. He's very concerned about the plight of these refugees. Meanwhile, the refugees have hatched a plan. They've figured out some way of saving their lives. It's maybe not so important the details of it, but there are a couple of islands that they can flee to Curacao and Suriname, the Caribbean, that will let them in without the official documentation. But there's still an obstacle, which is that they have to go through Japan in order to get to these islands. So Chiune Sugihara asks for authorization from his mother country, from Japan, to issue a bunch of visas for these refugees to travel through Japan to a final destination elsewhere. He writes in 3 different times, and each time he gets the same response. No, under no circumstances. Do not write those visas. So he's now torn. Chiune Sugihara is a Christian, and his Christian values of helping the needy, of helping those who are poor and destitute and in need, are in conflict with his upbringing in Japan, in which he's taught to value obedience and respect and honor. So he's faced with an extremely difficult decision. He has to decide, is he going to disobey an order from his own government? If he does this, his career will be ruined. He'll be dishonored, his family will be dishonored, his economic situation will be ruined. His wife and children won't have an easy time eating for the rest of their life. So he talks it over with his wife and his children, and they decide that there's no choice. He has to do it. As he says, if he didn't disobey his own country's government, he would be disobeying God. He would be disobeying the deepest truth that he knew. So he's now finally in a situation like this. He's decided to write the visas. And so he does this. He spends 29 days, going from the end of July through the end of August of 1940, where his life is like this. There's only one thing left to do. Write visas. He has to write them out by hand. There isn't advanced photocopying technology or telecommunications technology. He has to write each visa out by hand. And he knows that each visa he writes is going to translate to probably something like a life saved. Maybe less if the person doesn't make it, maybe more if the person's able to take a family or something. But he has this clear and direct line from taking an action to saving somebody from enormous suffering and, in fact, death. So his whole life transforms, and it just becomes about writing these visas. He's writing 300 of them a day. This is the amount that would normally be written in an entire month of the whole consulate doing its work. He just writes and writes and writes. And he's pulling 18 or 20-hour days for a month, morning to night, just writing, 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 all day long. His hands get sore. His wife puts ice on them. He doesn't break for meals. She brings him sandwiches to feed to him. He keeps on going. Finally, at the end, the invasion is about to take place. He gets onto the very last train that he can, getting out of Lithuania. And even as the train is leaving the station, as it's starting to move away, he's still writing out these documents and passing them out the window of the train so that the refugees can leave. We don't know how many lives he saved with this. There are various guesses. Low end, maybe something like 2,000. High end, maybe something like 40,000. And when we're talking about this point, Samyak Samadhi, it gets to be like that. We see that getting out of our stories, getting out of our patterns, getting out of our heads, attending to the focus space directly is saving lives and saving our own life and the lives of many other people. And so there's nothing else to do. We pull 18 or 20-hour days without thinking about it, without trying, without forcing ourselves to. It's just natural. We give everything that we have to it, and everything becomes simple. We're not thinking about next week or next month anymore. We're not thinking about how we'll eat or how we'll sleep anymore. It's all become irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's like this. People often have the sense that if you want to do the path, you have to strive and push and force yourself to do these very challenging, strenuous activities. You'll hear stories about monks doing this in monasteries, and you think, well, these crazy people, they're forcing themselves, it's terrible. But it isn't like that. Of course, sometimes it can be like that. People can do that. But it isn't like that ultimately. At a certain point, you just want to do that, because that just is what it takes. You see that by clarifying this experience, by directly understanding reality, you can actually help real people. And how can you actually help real people by doing this? Simply enough, when we meet someone who is suffering, if we have resolved that suffering, if we are not afraid of that experience of suffering, if we know that we can have that experience with confidence, joy, and we aren't afraid of their suffering, we don't need to fix them, which means that we can just be with them and love them and accept them as they are. This is extremely important in the world today, and it's only going to get more important over the next months, weeks, years. This is a skill that's crucial, for example, for doctors and those in the medical industry to have, and it's one that isn't typically taught in med school. There's no class in med school on facing the suffering of somebody who is choking on their own blood, for example. You don't know how to do that unless you have done that. That's a skill that you have to learn. That's something that you have to do. Therefore, to practice this path, to face this moment, this experience as it is, allows us to be of service to the world. Naturally, I hope it's clear and obvious that this isn't in conflict or contradictory to resolving objective circumstances. You do want to help people get better. You want to make drugs or treatment protocols. You want to practice social distancing or whatever it is that you need to do. And yet at the same time, we have to be able to face and appreciate and accept the experience of people as they are. So we'll spend just a little bit of time now doing that together. A little bit of time practicing together in stillness. And then, as I said, we'll move into a discussion about primarily the practice. And from there, we'll move into a discussion about actions that we can take in the world. I'm just going to plug my computer in. Apologies. So let's take a moment again to straighten up and settle in. Finding a posture supportive of the practice. And as well, finding a way of breathing supportive of the practice. Way of breathing that is relaxed. Maybe our exhalation is elongated, and yet also energetic. Taut, fully alive, and yet also relaxed. Using this breath concentrated in the belly, extending throughout our whole body. Using this posture, stable, rooted, and upright. Purify your state of mind. In particular, in terms of Buddhism, there are said to be 5 dominant hindrances to practice. We can explore how to use this breath to purify them one by one. Purify the hindrance of covetousness, sense craving, wishing for things of the world or for specific states of mind. If it's present, if you're aware of covetousness, breathing in such a way as to work through it. Trying different things, and when in doubt, just breathing and being aware of it. And purifying any sense of ill will or hatred. Any desire for anyone, anywhere, to suffer or to not exist. Use the breath and the body to work through that hindrance of hatred. Obviously, including the case of self-hatred. Purify any sense of slothfulness, torpor, complacency, any sense of being stuck in a rut, having low energy, find a way of using the breath in the body to support us in maintaining alertness and energy. Purifying any sense of anxiety, restlessness, worrying about what we did or didn't do in the past, in the future, or right now. So there's a sense of calm ease. Our minds are inwardly peaceful. Purifying as well any sense of shallow doubt, manufactured confusion about what we aren't really confused about, aimless, meandering, philosophical thinking, undirected, ungrounded skepticism. Clear about wholesome states. Having clarified, purified our state of mind, as well as aligned our body and our breathing, we may now enter upon the practice that leads to samadhi, therefore the practice that leads to enlightenment. A practice of bringing our attention to a focus object and laying it on a focus object. If you have a preferred focus object, you can use that. As a default, you can use the breath in the lower abdomen. Bring our attention to the breath in the lower abdomen and lay it on the breath in the lower abdomen. And in fact, throughout the whole of experience. In terms of the approach we use in this tradition to talk about this, if we are aware of self, concepts, or attachment, or the special case of attachment to concepts of a self, then at that time we're missing the target. If we're directly aware of the focus space, then at that time we're hitting the target. We play this game, finding out how to hit the target, how to bring our attention to the focus space and lay it on the focus space. We let this game become fun. We have fun doing this game. We have fun doing this technique. In the entryway to samyak samadhi, to right concentration, is that this fun, this very sense of fun, in combination with the sense of joy based on integrity, based on having purified our whole lives, spread throughout and fill up our entire body. To spread the joyful exhilaration of fun and integrity through our whole body is the entryway to right concentration. So things are now very simple. We're experiencing the joyful exhilaration of fun and integrity, and we just spread that through our whole body, using the breath, using the body. If not, then we just work with whatever it is that's coming up. It's likely that there is some hindrance that is active, covetousness, ill will, torpor, anxiety, or doubt. We would just work through that hindrance, work to disable that hindrance, cut through, move beyond, or set aside that hindrance. Or possibly there is an issue with our posture and our breath. We just explore how to sit and how to breathe. In this way, giving ourselves to this experience. Staying with this as it is. Trusting that whatever experience we're having right now is the experience that is appropriate for us to have right now. It's the right one. It's the one to work through, the one to work with. As we continue to deepen into practice, the basic direction, the direction of right concentration, the direction of samyak samadhi, is the direction of less. How to move in the direction of less. How to stop doing everything that we are doing. So this state of utter simplicity can move through the whole body, whole mind, whole world, unobstructed. And the basic strategy for doing this is faith. Okay. So, in your own time, coming out of that, or keeping it going as you see fit. We'll now move into the discussion portion of the event. So for now, I'd like us to keep the discussion oriented around the practice, the technique, the path we talked about, and then after a little bit of time doing that, we'll move into more action-oriented conversation. So anyone's free to speak up anytime you like. Just go ahead and unmute and start talking.
This might be shallow doubt, but how do I know when I'm doing it right rather than, say, there being sneaky hindrances in the way that I'm unaware of?
If you are aware of self-concepts or attachment, you're missing the target. And if you're directly attending to the focus space, then you're hitting the target.
And you contend that it is impossible to do both at the same time.
Well, so are you contends that. So I relay that.
Oh, can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
So something that I notice when I'm close to getting to the point that we're trying to get to, because I have been there, is that you start to do it right. You start to get unbroken concentration on the breath. It's very obvious when this is happening. And then you go, oh, whoa, I'm there. Hey, I'm doing it. And that thought is not doing it. And you fall out of it. Right? And then after a couple of times of that phenomena happening, you go, oh, and you learn to treat those feelings of, oh, I'm doing it right, as a distraction. And then they no longer distract you. That's all.
Excellent. So anything else?
I want to share, share a technique that is useful for me to get to that point. Still elusive, but it's helpful for me to sometimes start by visualizing myself driving down a road, and the sort of self-talk that occurs to me, I place it on a billboard on the side of the road and just visualize driving past it. That can be helpful for the first little while of whatever it is that we're doing here.
Amazing. Yeah, visualization is very powerful. It's shocking. You know, you can visualize yourself as a mountain, for example, and all the thoughts as little clouds around the mountain. And something like that can work. It's really surprising to me how useful visualization is in the practice. Thank you. Anything else?
Jishin, could you say a few more words about using the breath to purify the hindrances? I tried following along with what you were saying, but wasn't really sure. Like I could see some of the hindrances in play, but didn't know how to make progress on them.
Yeah, right. So basically, this is actually maybe a little bit of an advanced technique, so it's okay to just try this a lot and fail. There's a skill in having fun with trying and failing at things. It's really valuable. It's not one that I have natively. I've had to pick it up. I never played sports or anything, and so I'm not used to, hitting a ball into a net again and again, for example, and saying, good job. I had to learn that in the process of doing this. So that's the first thing. Next thing is that your breath, so there's sort of there's 2 or 3 key things for the kind of breath that's useful for this. They are that it's relaxed, that it's energetic, and that it's from and with the muscles of the core. You're actually using your abdominal muscles to breathe, not using your head, your throat, or your chest. Actually using the core of your body to do the breath. And this is actually directly drawing down whatever you want to call this, ki, energy, awareness, whatever you want to say it is. Maybe there's a physiological component of it. I don't know. But it's drawing it down into the belly. And it's actually, so when I say energetic, it can actually be very energetic. Your whole body is taut. And then you let the in-breath come in naturally and you do that again. So that's the first thing. And in this way, it's like you're using, so the hindrances are taking energy. They need energy in order to sustain themselves. Your want needs energy, and the energy is you're feeding them as you sort of buy in, as you stay with them naively. So with this strategy, with using this breath, you're diverting all of the energy to the breath, so that you're breathing with everything that you've got, which means that the hindrances don't have enough to sustain themselves. So they just fall down. They are disabled. That happens. So that's the first stage. So you just give your whole energy, everything that you have, to breathing, just throwing yourself into this breath. Having done that, once the hindrances have fallen off temporarily, and there's kind of a magic to knowing when to make this shift, and also to knowing what the shift is, because it's easy to, it can be very hard. So just to breathe in that first way, relaxed, energetic, centered, can be a months-long task. To learn how to do that can be a months-long task. That is time well spent. That's a good investment of time. Having done that, there is now a further task, which is that you make a transition into a natural kind of breath. You aren't breathing anymore. The breath is happening. This is very hard to do. Most of the time when we aren't breathing, what is actually happening is that we are subtly manipulating our breath in order to maintain a kind of self-conscious awareness. The sort of, quote, natural breath that we often have is actually a highly fabricated artificial breath. This isn't our natural breath. Okay, so we discover our natural breath. We discover a kind of breath that we don't do, that just happens naturally. It's the breath that a baby does. Baby is breathing, its whole core is totally involved in each breath, and there's no effort, no thought, there's no conceptualization about it. So in a way that isn't, so the problem is that we often interpret this as you go in a certain direction with the belly breath, and then you turn around in order to do the natural breath. It isn't like that. It's like you go in a certain direction with the belly breath, and then you go further in the same direction with a more natural breath that you aren't doing anymore. And then that carries you a long way, and maybe ultimately nowhere. Anything else on that?
That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Okay, maybe one more question or report or anything at all that anyone would like to share. And if not, that's okay. You can also just express a joy or sorrow that you have. We're not all together right now, and so you can just say something, and then it's like we're with you a little bit.
Well, I was virtually fist pumping when you in the earlier dialogue when you pointed out that last week we were sad that we were on our screen, and this week we're happy that we're doing something righteous. Andy was in the room and he was heading out to Target to see if there's any paper products left. and he turns to me when you're saying this and he's like, he's doing a great job. I just wanted you to know that.
Oh, thank you. It's really nice.
Of course.
Yeah, there isn't really any live feedback. You're all, I mean, I can see pixels, but you're not there. And so it's very confusing. You are there, but you're very small and quiet. And I don't have, psychic powers strong enough to see you without the pixels. So here we are. Great. So that's maybe a good segue, actually, into next portion, which is going to be inspired by something that's actually done in Vermont. They do something kind of like this in Vermont, but a little bit different. Vermont is, as you know, very interested in a certain kind of political activism, and also general purpose activism. So there's a time at the Sunday Sits in Vermont where people can share things that they do that ought to be done, actions that ought to be taken in the world. So I'm going to try to model this off of that, but adapt it to the circumstances. We're a different group of people, and also there's a different situation. In particular, there's currently, as we know, a global pandemic going on, a public health crisis of maybe unprecedented proportions. I would like us to harness our collective intelligence in this group to share things that we can do. And I'm going to try to set some ground rules just based on experience and judgment and guesswork. The guidelines, I'm going to suggest that we don't do very much, if any, commentary during this particular conversation. So someone has an idea, someone else may say that's a stupid idea. It may be a stupid idea. They may be dumb and have that idea because they're dumb. But we're not worried about that right now. If you care, then you can find them afterwards and talk to them about it, get curious about it. Maybe they actually have a smart idea for doing, or reason for doing it that you don't know about. Maybe they actually are dumb. But just in the interest of throughput, maximizing kind of throughput, we're not going to try to comment too much on the ideas that are mentioned. We'll just notice, okay, who said what? Someone said, I'd like to organize a group of this kind of people in order to do this. This needs to happen. I need these people. We say, I am or no one of those. Follow up with them after the call. We establish a group. We establish some infrastructure. We establish the networks. We build out from there. Does that all make sense? Any concerns about that? Great. So now feel free, any of us, we can just unmute, start talking. If you interrupt each other, sort it out, one person at a time, obviously. What do we do? What is to be done?
There's a project I know of to investigate making makeshift hospital equipment on the expectation that our hospitals are going to start overflowing.
Great. So we should talk to Jeremy about that. I'm taking notes here. You may also want to take your own notes. I'll send these out after the call on the Facebook group.
There is a project to create, I need to find words to describe it, a heat map of people who are infected that's pretty granular, like more than a national level, but on like a kind of neighborhood level. That's also focused on differential privacy. So it's not just like a trajectory of every human who has it, and we all know that, which would be too invasive to be adopted. It's called COVID Watch. Yeah, and yeah, there's various features with it, but yeah, if anyone wants to get involved, they could really use like software engineers, people with iOS or Android experience. Could be really helpful. And Daniel he was here with us, has one of the first coders of the epidemiological prototype they have, and he'll drop a link to it if people want to get involved, or they can talk to us.
Great. Let's talk to Donnie or Daniel about the COVID Watch. I will maybe state the obvious or maybe not. If you have any relatives, family, parents, grandparents, even ones who you often don't talk to, now is a good time to talk to them. Of course, maybe they're still in the dark about this. They don't know that they should be preparing. Maybe they're preparing wrongly. In all likelihood, you are one of their, smart friends, people who they take seriously, even if they may disagree. And talk to them, both to inform them and also to share love with them. To tell your parents, your grandparents, your cousins, your siblings that you love them. And to maybe stay home for a little while.
Joshin?
Mm-hmm.
I reached out this morning to a musician that is going through canceled performances and recognizing another talent that they may have that I could engage them in maybe Zoom lessons in this period to help them maybe recoup some of their lost income.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very significant for the artists, as freelance musicians especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, find ways of help if you have tasks, or maybe you need help with income. You're talking about kind of employing people, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Related to that, my house has been talking about continuing to pay our cleaners who we normally employ to come here, but we're no longer inviting over to the house just to help them get through it.
Similar to that, we should consider that the artists and musicians in our networks are suddenly completely incomeless for the next, for a while. The idea that this is only going to be 2 weeks and then we're all going to walk out of our houses as if from a dream. 2 weeks is not going to be the end of this. Performances have been canceled for months in advance at this point. Andy and I have decided to delay our wedding, which was supposed to be in July 5th. The events are canceled. And so the artists in your midst, it's worth considering how we can support people who would normally work at events. To that end, there's going to be a dance party tonight being held over Twitch, and I will send you guys the event link. It's a Facebook event link. Basically, this amazing DJ named Damoth is going to be DJing a dial-in dance party, and I think it's worth dialing in, dancing along, chatting along, like, you know, maybe even making up like, hey, I'm making out with my friend in the corner. Like, try to treat this as an opportunity for creative celebration, and then kick that guy some money and look for more opportunities to do stuff like that too.
I have two suggestions. As usual, one stupider than the other. The slightly stupider suggestion is, so restaurant businesses are down everywhere between 50 to 70%. And so my suggestion is at least order takeout once a week. And so and then I have a smarter suggestion, because I heard from a wise man today that just by sitting by yourself, you benefit the world. So I've been sitting an hour a day, and I highly recommend it for everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Ming.
I have two things. One of them is related to what Meng just said, that a wise man has given us all confidence that sitting benefits the world. And so reaching out to my virtual communities as well and inviting them to sit, to just do a Zoom sit, group sit. It's a thing that I'm going to be offering. The other thing is to, wherever it's possible, be creative about what to do with cancellations. So, for example, if you have to cancel services that you have engaged for some reason, and you know with certainty that you're not canceling, you're postponing, perhaps consider paying at the original time for the service that will be rendered when it is possible to take it up again. It's thinking along those lines for how to mitigate some of the loss of income for people who are in those kinds of circumstances.
A couple more ideas I've had. One, maybe making a viral chain letter to offer to a few friends to like help them with whatever their biggest problems are right now, and then people can just like spread that. Could be good. Also, if for any software engineers, maybe working on like more supply management tools to supply chain like tools to make them more resilient. Just like could be good in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, group. This is Pam. I'm here because of Renee, and I really, really like being part of this today. I work in an integrative pharmacy in Los Angeles, and we are reminding each other to wash our hands and wash our phones and be real mindful of our surfaces and where we put our fingers, and I think, and what we touch. And I think that's really helpful for us just to kindly model that, especially if you do patronize stores, when you do the takeout, and just remind each other. Maybe when somebody delivers something, have hand sanitizer there for them, those kind of things, just to, so that we're all really conscious of it. Thank you.
Dana's sharing that with regard to restaurants, she's heard another thing that people can do is buy gift cards now, which is equivalent to an interest-free loan. And secondly, she hasn't tried this herself, but if you go out and need to not touch your face, there is a link, Don't Touch Your Face Guide. Don't Touch Your Face .guide. Thank you for that.
I've got one more thought. I'm in the recovery world and I'm concerned about some of the people that aren't getting to face meetings. So if you know somebody sober or in a 12-step program, reach out to them in addition to your family members.
In terms of self practice, I can use this as an opportunity to realize that it's a very tangible moment in which every decision that I make has an impact, not just on the person next to me, but perhaps on a person half a continent away. And that people respond to fear in very different ways, and to practice not only non-judgment of someone's fear response, but also recognizing that just I don't say that I have fear doesn't mean that response isn't equally from a point of fear. And so to practice non-judgment and even listen when possible in an accepting way, through whatever medium, I think is also a valid way to use this.
Thank you. One that I would offer is to read and investigate. We're generally speaking in a kind of information poor situation about this. Not that there isn't a lot of information, but that it's very hard to tell what is true. So read, do your own research, listen, evaluate, pay attention to things. There's a time when we have to, put our sense-making abilities to the test. And we have the dance link from Naomi. Thank you for that.
Kind of obvious thing, but like if there's a good probability that there's some supply you have not yet purchased that could be useful, maybe try and specify what that thing is, whether it's like having enough soap, disinfectant wipes, gloves. Also, copper tape, if you haven't heard, is apparently really good at deactivating viruses. You can put that on your doorknobs, sink handles, stuff like that, and get it for others. Yeah, also just buying things for others could be really valuable.
Yeah, we have a question about copper tape. So it seems like copper is antimicrobial in general. So putting copper tape on stuff like phones and doorknobs plausibly may prevent the spread of the virus. And it's just what it sounds like. It's tape that's made of copper.
Something that seems valuable to me right now is events like these, where we practice finding new ways of interacting with each other virtually. I'm trying to explore this a lot and would love to explore it with other people and figure out what works well. In particular, I would like to find some way of replicating something like a casual social gathering, like a house party, but on the internet.
To that end, last night I hung out with some friends on my couch. Just basically, I posted a link in a private group that I started. Some people that I know in real life. In fact, a week ago, we were all hanging out talking about philosophy, with like 18 people in a room. And so this week, a couple of people, I started with the notion that like if one person showed up, it would be a success. And I found that one person and I posted the link, and we ended up with 4 or 5 people sitting around talking for 4 hours. It was great. We hung out. So definitely, and Henry, who was there last night, has been thinking about what are the rituals that we have when we join these things. Like, what are the virtual handshakes and gestures.
Because we're developing new notions of socialization. We're developing new patterns and over new mediums, and something that I'm trying to think about. This is obviously spurring a lot of changes for all of us, across society. How many of them will be temporary or permanent or what is not yet clear, but we have an opportunity to consciously influence how these things work and to try to transmit some shared values through new, setting new norms and rituals. So everything from, is this a group chat that I should join on mute, or should I say hi when I come in? Is this a group chat that is okay to join late? What happens when someone joins late? How do we spend a reasonable amount of time introducing each other? All of these things. What happens when someone wants to leave in the middle of that? Do you drop out, or do you say something to close out your participation? So there's a whole range of things, and we can try to be conscious about what values we want to interject through that to help build social connection and strengthen that through these new forms and technologies. And maybe move past the kind of stilted corporate video conf. I think the bingo's been going on, or there's a bingo card going on. Like, I think you're on mute. I think and it's like we need to deal with all of those things, but maybe we can make it a bit more of a social, fun convention.
Totally.
I just want to add to that. Thinking a little about how to make it as easy as possible for others to socialize with you virtually. I have noticed it tends to just make things harder. Like, even like if we like consciously have an idea, oh yeah, we can socialize over phone or video chat, and that can like be more convenient than hanging out online. But empirically, it seems to be the case that like it's just humans naturally tend to like not believe it's as real, and so we have to consciously make an effort to counteract that. Even during this crisis, I've been having a hard time kind of engaging in the socialization, so we have to like make an active effort to make it easy for ourselves as possible.
So something I've been sitting with a bit is really understanding how differently people experience isolation of whatever levels. As an introvert who is often self-isolating due to a range of mental health issues, I'm very used to being alone, and my apartment is very well set up for that. And it's been very interesting for me to understand how much of an impact this is to people, even to hear people talking about what they're, what you're doing to socialize now. And I'm thinking, it's only been 2 or 3 days. It's at least a week before I start feeling antsy about socialization. And just understanding that breadth of experience within people and what that means, and who might need help with this transition because it's such an unfamiliar experience, and what those of us who are familiar with this experience can do to help people cope with things, because there are skills to coping with this. It's not automatic.
Great. I wonder how many people are going to get pets during this process. I have found, so I started 2 aquariums in my house, 2 little 5-gallon aquariums with shrimp in them. So like blue dream shrimp and cherry shrimp, and it has been one of the biggest like improvements to my house in like, like I don't want to watch TV, but I really do want to watch snails running into shrimp getting occasionally interacted with by like little guppies and stuff. It is fascinating. And there's all these little problems to solve with the tank. It's like running a little ecology in my own house. It's really engaging. And I already have 2 cats, and so I don't feel so alone. I wonder if people will start taking up pets. And I have a broader thing that I've been thinking about. What is the future history of this moment? Like a year from now or 5 years from now, if you were to write in an article as if you were writing like a journal of like, for the past year, this is what it was like. We all did this. We had dance parties at home. We all found out that telecommuting was much more possible than anybody previously imagined. People also started to realize that there are a lot of bullshit jobs. Just if you were to write down, like, project out a year from now, I think it's interesting to think about, like, what are the things that society, like the realizations that people are going to make. That's it.
Great. And Pam just mentioned in the chat, some pure essential oils are immune and respiratory supportive, and also generally antimicrobial, and also good for mood.
I have a question for Henry. Henry, just now you talked about being alone being a set of skills. Can you give us some examples?
I mean, it's something that I'm starting to figure out, because it's not something that I really thought about consciously before. But this has come up with other introverts as well, who tend to isolate themselves for whatever reason. And I've seen Kitty Stryker put out a article on Medium. I can send that if I can find it. But some things are just ways to occupy yourself in a small space, or trying to figure out things to keep yourself entertained. Like, for example, this morning I didn't have any particular reason to put on, well, until I did the video, I was just lazing in bed. But then when I got up, I was like, oh, what outfit makes me feel good about myself right now? So that's a very simple thing to do, to just make an intentional choice to create a nice mood for yourself while you're alone. And then also picking, focusing on activities and making sure you have a variety of things, making sure that you have a to-do list of non-urgent things. When you get bored, just pick something off of the list. That doesn't have to be like to do like chores, but it could be to do, oh, I meant to read that book. Oh, okay. Yeah, now I'd forgotten, but I do now remember that I meant to read that book, and I stuffed it over there in the corner, and now's a great time to start off with it. So just things to keep you from sitting around going, there's nothing to do.
Great.
And when in doubt, practice. That's
Yes,
that's
this
a
is new for
go-to
me.
for me. That's that's me. I'm doing that.
Great. And then another maybe bit edgier suggestion would be consider the possibility of volunteering in hospitals. Pastoral care for people who are really suffering is going to be extremely important very soon. And like it or not, by dint of participating in this event, you are among the most skilled people in our culture at doing that right now. So consider the possibility of doing that. The Oak residents and apprentices are on retreat right now, and I've told them it has to be up to me to decide whether to pull them out and ask them to go volunteer in hospitals, if that becomes more important. Which of course means that they may get sick, and you may get sick. It is something that we may decide is appropriate to take on.
So I want to ask another question, and I don't really know how to frame it yet, but I'll tell you where it's coming from. So the reason I asked Henry the previous question is because I don't really know how to help, how to advise. And the reason is, so there are two types of people who don't have problems with boredom. One are meditators, and the other are gamers. And I'm both, right? So I have no idea how to help anybody who say they're bored. So one question that comes to mind is, how skillful is it to just tell people just meditate? Is that a skillful thing to say?
I think you can. I don't. This is going to sound maybe weird, but I think that it's really possible to just be with someone in a way that helps them meditate without saying just meditate. And I think that, I mean, things like, even like helping someone who's, my problem is that I just discovered that I touch my face all the time and I'm not supposed to touch my face. And you can lead them through a practice that helps them then understand what's going on, feel the itch, notice your hand. And so doing those kinds of things, now they have a meditation practice that they can do without you there and without you having said, oh yeah, you won't be bored if you meditate.
Okay, and we have time for maybe a couple more suggestions, and then I think after that we'll maybe take it into a bit more of an organic conversation.
I think this is a really good time to, across the board, observe areas that we can innovate in, whether that's just noticing the problems that arise as we experience this. This is a really good time to fix things that are broken as people are putting attention on, like, and creating a consensus around, oh yeah, it's okay to like fix all these things. And that could also, specifically maybe thinking about future pandemics, how to prevent those, and a lot of people will be putting resources towards that, so you can probably coordinate others towards that.
Great. And then Naomi says that people should not use anti-inflammatory drugs if they have coronavirus-like symptoms because it could worsen their condition. So ibuprofen, cortisone, etc., could be an aggravating factor for the infection. If you have a fever, take paracetamol. And she says you can use turmeric as an anti-inflammatory. Anything else to add to that?
No, sorry for the, all of this kind of like new information feels like being jabbed with a pin from 10 different directions, right? So I'm sorry if I added to anybody's feeling of crisis. That seemed like an important one.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, really appreciate all of you coming together. Very grateful for you practicing and being this community. As you say, really important at a time like this, that we have networks, that we have communities. So maybe now, if you want, we can make it more of an organic conversation, hang out if you like, take off if you like, splinter off into a smaller group chat or something if you like, I don't know. Or see you soon, maybe next week.
Thank you so much for holding this space.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for filling it. Really appreciate it.
I'm going to post a link or two to Facebook groups that are talking about sort of pragmatic responses to this pandemic. Again, not to freak people out, but just, there are, for instance, initiatives to make DIY medical equipment that I would love to, if anybody here is interested, just get you directly connected with other people. Like, there's people who used to be part of apocalyptic prep cults, and they're just like, I've been training my entire life for this. And so I'll post a link to a group where those people can be found.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I've been talking, I mean, it seems like there are just a bunch of people who have been practicing for this for years by doing things like Burning Man camps, hacker camps. It's like everyone has gotten together to work on meaningless projects, which is to say has practiced the form of doing projects. And I feel like we can/ought to use those networks and communities to do stuff like that. So I've been thinking about tapping the noise camp folks, like Milo and Ruben and such, to try to work on like 3D printed respirators or something.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to, at Noisebridge, we normally host this this thing called the Stupid Shit Hackathon. It's the expanded name is Stupid Shit No One Needs and Terrible Ideas Hackathon. And we are canceling the physical embodiment of this hackathon, but we're talking about turning it into like important things everyone needs to save the world kind of hackathon. So definitely Ruben, Milo, etc. Like, yeah, definitely that feeling of thing.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm not formally taking notes anymore, but I reserve the right to copy and paste links into the document.
You know, I'm coming from a university in Texas where, you know, in a way, it's a sort of neoliberal institution response that is nevertheless the correct response. uh, um, but being in a very large college of music where what we do is so much transmitted and experienced face to face, and you know, having that removed, and that necessarily means that for the program that I'm in, I'm sort of, it's not at all clear whether I may in fact just be done 8 weeks early, or I may wind up doing something else. It's very strange. But I'm surrounded by people who are sort of like, well, I mean, it's just not possible to do what we do, period. And one realization that I had was that I think that it's definitely an opportunity to decide whether how we are and what we do, and this is specific to sort of the classical music world, but I think it's actually true about my life entirely. Am I trying and hold on to ways something may or may not actually have been in the past, and that includes sort of my identity as a cis white male, or am I trying to be part of a living tradition? And what is the opportunity here for us to let go of things that are ready to be let go of, and embrace the reality that we are part of a living, breathing community? And so that's kind of what I'm just holding in my mind. And instead of just jumping onto all the automatic sort of easy responses, I'm actually just trying to think about, like Naomi's suggestion, what does, or your suggestion, Joshin, what does life look like in the future? What could it look like in the future? What could I learn to make that I take for granted now? And that's it. Sorry, that was a long ramble.
No, I appreciate that. Sorry, I was pasting the link into a group that which actually is an interesting point. I recently got a chance to discover how much of a difference it makes when someone is attentively listening versus when they're distracted. I generally assumed that I was sometimes good at talking and sometimes bad at talking, and it was my fault when I was bad at talking. And when I was good at talking, something magical was happening that was out of my control. Turns out when people are listening to me, I'm good at talking. And when people aren't, I'm not. So you're, in a way, doing the talking. I'm not really talking. Words are coming out of my mouth, but you're doing it.
That makes you something of an oracle.
Yeah.
Or a Ouija board.
Yeah, exactly. And then how so online when we have such limited ability to see each other and experience each other's listening? Very different experience for me trying to give an event like this without other bodies in the room.
So I want to say about that I have spent the last 2 years doing more and more and more stuff by video conferencing, and have discovered that the connection in this format can be every bit as palpable as sitting in a room together. And I think it is as much the habit of believing and having the experience of connection when you are in physical proximity to each other that just gets in the way of what is actually really going on. I can feel all of you just as much as if I was sitting there in Berkeley and all of you were sitting in the same space with me. And just becoming sensitized to that is a thing that this uncomfortable, awful moment can bring to us, that we can then make more real and understand it's there, just like everything else that we get sensitized to by practicing it. So the sooner you can allow that thought pattern to recede, the better this is all going to feel.
Yeah, thank you.
That is such an on target and excellent statement. The word that comes into my mind to help, like, to name that thing is cybernetics. Is the thing that makes it so that when you sit in the car feels like an extension of your body, and the senses that come to you through the car, the motions of the car, how fast the scenery is going past you so that you know how fast you're going. These are things that are not native to human experience, but we make them native until they feel just as natural as walking down the street. However natural walking down the street is. I don't know. I think a lot of the hesitation that people have felt about things like online conferencing, or even just talking on the phone. Like, I know lots of people who just avoid talking on the phone. It just feels too disconnected. Is just they haven't fully sensitized themselves to those experiences to pick up on the nuances. It's very strange to see faces looking at different points, right? Like, you look down the list, like the sort of like all the different squares that I can see all of you in, and we're not quite looking eye to eye, even with the best intentions of like, even if I'm definitely looking straight in the camera, you're not necessarily looking at the right point in order for me to make virtual eye contact. And I think, like, over time, I have noticed myself becoming less and less concerned with that as a sensory point, as a data point. Whereas in the beginning it felt awkward, and now I don't notice it as much. I think I'm looking for other points. So I think in this maybe perverse way, I'm excited about the quarantines, in the sense that we're all going to develop new cybernetic patterns.
Well, it
Amen.
basically comes back to me that the quality of my attention is actually my own responsibility and my own problem, no matter how much I'd like to blame it on the fact that it's like, oh, well, it's because I was trying to deal with a bad computer connection. And that may be part of it, but the bad computer connection is happening. And I'm probably letting myself be distracted by my reaction to the bad computer connection, and not the fact that there's a living, breathing human on the other end. And so what's so great about this, and I echo all the thanks to you, Joshin, for doing this, is that there was something that brought us just bypassed all of that nonsense. And that's a very powerful experience for me. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in a way, we're kind of already interacting in virtual reality if we're interacting based on sense experience. It's already, by the time you're looking at someone and seeing a person, you're already in virtual reality. It isn't a fundamentally different thing for it to be in a screen.
That is an excellent thought. Just I like that thought just all on its own.
Now, of course, there is such a thing as reality.
But is there?
That's a big claim. That's a big claim that Saruya makes. It's a big fight. There's such a thing as reality.
Forgive me. I have to say that I tend to disagree with the recent direction this has taken. I think there is a opportunity to find new ways to engage the human spirit and connectivity, but I also don't think we should think of it as a replacement for presence. That in fact, presence is powerful and profound and absolutely essential. And to the question of, is it virtual? Is it is indeed all of life merely virtual sense expressions? I think, and this is a very Buddhist way to look at it, that the point.
Well, I wasn't saying that.
No, but the point being that in the absence of presence, people suffer, and that's the key. And there are ways of ameliorating that, but I don't think they substitute for presence. I think we're trying to find new forms of delight. I would use the example, and this is what Shuri Terkel has written a great deal about, that nursing homes that give lonely seniors who have no one to talk to robotic pets are, on the one hand, doing them a good turn because they have something to focus on and coo with, and it reduces their suffering to an extent. But we don't see this as a substitute for someone actually spending time with them. I think that we can try to do better than giving one another robotic pets, and I think it's this is in fact an exciting opportunity. But I think we shouldn't gloss over the danger that comes with a lack of presence, which is something honestly I feel very, very deeply.
Yeah. Who are you?
Hi, my name's Benjamin.
Nice to meet
I'm
you.
a stranger in these parts.
Yeah. How'd you come in?
One of you here made a post that I saw an invite to.
That was me, probably.
I
Ben.
wasn't going to name you. I was going to leave it a mystery in case you didn't want to be fingered.
No. I'm glad you're here, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to have you here. Maybe we can fight about Buddhism sometime.
That is one of my happy places. But I will also say that I enjoyed your Dharma talk very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I suppose I consider this sort of artistically and aesthetically, and from a standpoint of human connection, a life will find a way moment. Like a plant growing up through the concrete. That's not the ideal circumstance under which it can grow, but it can still grow and be beautiful and even thrive.
I completely agree with you, actually, even though I was seeming to say the opposite. But I think part of it is that my point of view is in response to a situation from a long-standing tradition of classical music presentation, and then also the pedagogical habits, where the habits have often created distance and barriers even when people are face to face. And so that, for me, what's exciting about this opportunity, and I think you're absolutely right, is that life will find a way, but also that I'm in a field where a great deal needs to be reevaluated about what presence and connection can actually mean. And that part of my hope and dream is that what will come out of however long we go through this period of isolation and social distancing is that what happens is that we come out of it and have a renewed appreciation for what presence and a face-to-face engagement can mean. So I thank you for your stick in the face, if you will.
Thank you. And I think that's a very fair point. Just because face-to-face presence and engagement is in fact essential doesn't actually mean we're good at that either. And I think if you want to say, hey, we're screwing that up in a lot of ways, you're 100% right.
Yeah, I fully expect that we will emerge from this with with far more ability to be present with people when we are fully present with people. Because we will have had to kind of make ourselves do the extra effort. Like a lot of times when I think about pulling pulling a cart behind my back, my bike, and going up a hill, and I'm thinking about how much stronger I'm going to be on my bike next time I have to go up a hill when I'm not pulling that cart. Or in baseball, sometimes you train to hit a ball by swinging 3 bats, right? So so that you get stronger at swinging the bat, right? When it's only 1 bat. So I'm almost thinking of this as swinging with 3 bats. Right now, we're going to be so good at presence. We're going to like totally rock at being present with people.
Really good way to look at it, Naomi.
Thanks.
I want to say thanks, everybody. Signing off.
Thanks, Mom. Take care.
See you next week, I hope.
See you next week, I hope.
Yeah, I think anything we can do to practice presence in that sense is especially valuable. And I think if we lean away from the tendency that we've seen in digital interactions towards frictionlessness and ease and into the sort of awkwardness of human interaction, it will actually serve us very well in face-to-face connections. I think it's when we try to make everything smooth and easy, dare I say, user-friendly in the worst possible sense of that, that we start to move away from what we actually need as human beings. It's our awkward selves that need to be seen and engaged, as opposed to our online persona selves.
Mm-hmm.
I want to push back a little bit on Benjamin's stick in the eye, because I don't think we're actually in any danger of coming to the conclusion that face-to-face, like actually in-person meet space interaction is not valuable. Maybe a few months from now, but at the moment, I feel like the problem at hand is convincing people that we can do this, and there's a potent social benefit that we can get out of doing this. And pushing people to think creatively, I think sometimes requires a little bit of self-delusion.
And I think also, like, developing the skills of presence here, like, I definitely noticed at many times how hard it was to keep myself from futzing about with other things. And for much of the time I succeeded, and sometimes I didn't. And it's hard to be present with, like, once we go into to this less formal thing, I actually grabbed something to fidget with, because it's a little easier. Like, it's a weird balance of how do I keep myself occupied in the physical location while also directing my focus to the virtual location, and experimenting with what's the right amount of focus and distraction for different aspects of myself on that. So that's been an interesting experience of, yeah, what is being present? How do you handle it when the strictures that are in place by being in the same room as someone aren't there, where those social conventions don't exist? I can mute my camera and I can go do whatever I want if I want to. You know, how do we develop the ability to stay there with other people, which I seem to have lost somewhere.
I doubt. Oh, sorry.
Oh, well, I was going to say, you're still braver than I am, Henry, not just because my camera is not working, but because even if it weren't, even if it were, you know, I haven't turned it on. But yeah, I think that the question of, on a very basic level, what do you do with your body, is in some ways unexplored territory in this environment. It's certainly a part of being present, but what does that actually call for? What's good? I have no idea. I'm sometimes a fidgeter in actual in-person conversation, so it's not like that doesn't have a place. I just don't know, but I think that's a great point that you brought up.
It plays into what Justin was saying about when people are listening. He's a great talker.
That was a very interesting point moment. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think it's going to take some degree of allowing ourselves to do the sorts of things that we feel get our needs met, while also you know, pushing ourselves to have the discipline to tune in. During this process, I was on a foam roller, for example, and experiencing the, like, you know, the crushing pain in my fascia, as I was also tuning in to what people were saying. There were many points where I started to tune out and I had thoughts and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write them down and come back to them. And I tried not to experience the guilt for doing these things, because I knew that in the big picture, I would be able to, if I was attuned to my own needs while also pushing myself to tune in to what people were saying and thinking, etc., that in the end result would be I would stick with it and I wouldn't feel resentful that people were keeping me from attending to myself.
Yeah, there's probably not a one size fits all approach to that, and I don't know. I mean, we're all going to be coming from such different places in terms of how we stay focused or where we turn out or how we deal with that. But I agree with you that guilt over that is absolutely useless in this context. It actually takes, the more you focus on the guilt, the more it takes you further away from where you want to be anyway. So yeah. No.
I also, oh, sorry, keep going.
No, please.
I was also in like a, you know, extra thought on top of that is that a lot of us have experienced the meaninglessness of corporate, like, remote meetings and things like that. And I for one have been, and this is why I left this company, complicit in the basically like ego boosting the vice president, more or less, because he had a whole bunch of people, like, you know, like important manager people on his conference call, but none of us were actually listening to him. We just kind of were there because he called the meeting and it felt important, right? So like we have things to unlearn, at least some of us.
That's a great point. So much of this medium's potential has been hijacked by corporate work, which, you know, and had the same thing done to it that it does to language and, you know, business jargon and marketing speak. That's an excellent point. If it probably would be a very different digital environment if it had been artists or therapists that had been leading the charge towards moving towards digital media. That's wow. I think
or monks.
Something there.
Or monks, yeah.
Monks.
There's been a notice. This is one of my soapboxes. Is if you look at the history of telecommunications technology, it was done by monks for a very long time, and it was very good. And a little while ago, it stopped being done by monks, and it started getting worse. So I'm interested in monks doing telecommunications technology, where monk is a gender-neutral term, just so everyone knows. Or monks and nuns, if you prefer.
My longstanding impression has been that monks, as a gender-neutral term, tend to do everything better.
Well, I think I need to get going so I can do the next thing in my life. I have to prepare a talk for the residents tonight, who are in a, as you can imagine, pretty intense situation. Quite a week to go away from the world. So send thoughts and prayers to them, me, and everyone who is facing this situation.
Dance party.
Dance party.
Dance party night.
I'm gonna tune in at 8 o'clock. There's like a Twitch channel and stuff. So, but I too, I think I'd like to go attend to things.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.